Recently, much like a lot of people, I was recommended a feature-length film by a channel called Dual Process Theory, where they claim to have, quote, solved Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, being the little skeptical squirrel that I am, I immediately watched the video, got about 5 minutes in, and got bored. And then about 2 weeks later, I watched the entire thing. And having watched the entire thing, I agree with, or at least I don't agree, I like a lot of the points they make. Specifically, the main point they make, which I'll be discussing and kind of cleaning up and fixing in this video, the idea that the crying child is actually Cassidy, and it's Cassidy Afton, and it's all the same person. There's only one person inside Golden Freddy. There's no random fifth kid named Cassidy. I like that point a lot, but much like Matt Pat, who recently did his own reaction to that portion of the video, even after having watched it the first time around with absolutely no other influencing context, I had a major issue with the way that that particular theory was presented in that video. Namely, the timeline of the Bite of 83 happens before any of the MCI murders, and then the kid is in a coma while his dad just for some reason starts killing kids. I don't fully understand why. I don't think that's the best possible solution to what I assume the solution to that problem was for, which was why the death of Cassidy Afton will be blamed on Henry by the authorities, right? So I would assume the reason you would make sure to separate the Bite of 83 from the actual death by a significant amount of time is because having Cassidy die almost immediately after being bitten would not at all link Henry, who was the man eventually convicted for all these child murders. It wouldn't connect him at all to that. So I agree that the basic idea of the Bite of 83 happens a substantial amount of time before the kid actually dies. I like that, and I think that that's a good solution to that problem. However, as I said before, my biggest problem, and I think this is Matt Pat's biggest problem, as he says right here.
So the motivation, I guess the question I have here is what is the motivation for William Afton to start killing kids? Because he wants to my kid was injured, and so I want to injure other kids in order to experiment on them, see what happens, and I'm shoving them into animatronic suits to see if they'll come back to life?
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for William Afton to start murdering children after his kid gets bit in order to put him back together, because why would William Afton have any semblance of an idea that he could use remnant or possession or any term you can think of, right, to fix his kid if he hasn't already seen the effects of remnant, of dead children on animatronic robots. So, having done a little bit of thinking over that over the last couple of days, I think I may have come up with a concrete and reasonable and almost elegant, not quite elegant, but almost elegant solution to that problem, which I will now be presenting here today. So, in order to understand exactly what I'm talking about, we have to go down and just kind of work off the argumentation we're given. So first of all, we know from the Help 1 and 2 ending the exact order of deaths of the original MCI. They are as follows: Susie Chica, then Fritz Foxy, then Gabriel Freddy, then Jeremy Bonnie, then Cassidy Golden Freddy, then Charlotte and the Puppet. So, from this, we know that Cassidy dies after the other four original MCI, and then Charlotte dies a little bit later. We also know that the Gabriel, Freddy, Jeremy Bonnie, those were a double murder. We see this in the newspaper clipping from FNAF 1, which says that 2 children were lured into the back room. Although, importantly, about the FNAF 1 newspaper clipping, it never outright states that the police know or fully believe that all 5 murders were committed in the exact same manner. It never states that all 5 of the missing children's incident murders were committed by a man in a mascot costume luring children back to the back room. All it says is that 5 murders were linked to the one situation where 2 children were lured to the back of the back room. That will be important later. Now, like I said, we have to conclude that Cassidy, the Golden Freddy, died before Charlotte, but after the other 4, as outlined in Help 1 and 2 minigame. However, this does not in any way necessitate that he dies before, or rather the Night of 83, which eventually leads to his death, occurs before all 4 of those other murders. Specifically, I think it makes a whole lot more sense if we put the murder of Susie Chica and the murder of Fritz Foxy as having occurred before the Night of 83. So let me get into why I think that. First of all, as I said before, my biggest issue with dual process theory's timeline of the MCI is that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for William Afton to try to fix his kid with child murder if he had not murdered the child before and saw the effects firsthand. The way I solve this is basically saying that for a reason which is pure speculation, and which I will get into later, William Afton kills Susie and stuffs her into the Chica suit. He doesn't have, any idea of remnant or possession or anything like that. He just does this, and once again, I'll get into the reason why I think, personally, he murdered Susie in a minute. Now, after this, a few days later, the police are searching for a missing kid, as, they would. But William Afton notices that the Chica suit is acting strangely, perhaps even strangely in a way that wouldn't make 100% sense given the fact that he knows there's a dead child in there. So he figures out, or at least he surmises and guesses a little bit, that perhaps this animatronic is being possessed by the angry soul of a dead child, because he knows, and he is the only person who knows, that there is in fact a dead child inside of that animatronic suit. Given this information, and given the fact that we see that William Afton throughout the series is, for lack of a better word, a man of science, he decides that the best way to experiment and to figure out what's going on here is to mercilessly slaughter another child and put him, Fritz, into the Foxy suit to see what happens. Once Foxy starts acting strangely, William Afton has a pretty good idea of the fact that there's some kind of possession thing going on here. He wouldn't have any idea about remnant or the exact mechanics of it, but he knows that putting dead child inside animatronic suit leads to dead child possessing animatronic suit in some form or fashion. Fast forward perhaps a few days, a few weeks, and we get a pretty traumatic event, which is William Afton's youngest son, Cassidy, being stuffed into the mouth of a Fredbear suit, and his frontal lobe is consequently not in the healthiest shape, we'll say.
Was that the pirate or extraordinary?
He's put into a coma, and William Afton thinks to himself, hold on a second, I have pretty good proof that killing a kid inside of an animatronic might lead to that kid being alive again in a certain sort of messed up way. But, as I said before, William Afton, he's a man of science. So he says, I'm not going to try to kill my own child without a little bit more proof. So what does he do? He lures 2 boys, Gabriel and Jeremy, back to the back room in the spring Bonnie suit, and he murders them, and he puts them in a Freddy and a Bonnie suit to see what happens, see if his conclusions are correct. And they turn out to be correct. However, unfortunately for Mr. Afton, there are now cameras in the Fredbear Pizzeria. I don't know what the specific name of this location is, I forget. I'm not all up to date on the lingo, but there are cameras in this location. And a man wearing a spring Bonnie suit gets caught on camera luring 2 children into the back room where he comes out and the kids do not. So the police investigate. However, given that William Afton now has the information with pretty solid proof and evidence that dead kid plus animatronic equals kind of alive possessed animatronic kid, he kidnaps his own son from the hospital, puts him inside the Golden Freddy suit, spring locks him, and oopsie daisy, it does not seem to work. He then proceeds to, as dual process theory states, put the dead child in a box, bury in an unmarked hole in the woods behind his house, and claim that his own missing child was linked to the other 4 missing children. As dual process theory states, the police have basically no reason to not believe William at this point, and so they arrest Henry, because Henry's the only one who hasn't had a child disappeared or murdered of the 2 owners who would have access to the springlock suits. This does leave out the one possible point of contention. It leaves two possible points of contention. The first one is, why does William Afton kill Susie in the first place? I said before I have my own theory on that, which once again, this is pure speculation, but I think it's kind of funny, so I'm going to say it anyways. Basically, my theory is that William Afton got fed up with what he would consider a whiny little brat complaining about her dead dog all day, and because he's a psychopath and a narcissist who doesn't care about human life, because as we have proof, he does murder kids for little to no reason, he lures her into the back room with promises of her dead dog, and then kills her to shut her up, freaks out, puts her in the Chica suit, and everything I said before. In terms of the other hang-up I have, which is a pretty big one, I think, which is how does William Afton kidnap his own son, without anybody noticing, in a way that he can blame it on Henry? I don't know. William Afton's fucking magic sometimes. This, of course, ends the first 5 missing children. Henry gets arrested. Charlotte is later killed by Afton in a drunken rage because he is mad that he couldn't bring his son back. All of that together, Charlotte possesses the puppet, because the puppet, we see that in the FNAF 6 minigame. Great. Full timeline. So, the update of MCI timeline. Susie Chica is murdered. Then Chica starts acting weird. William Afton notices this and kills another kid for science. After that, he figures out pretty conclusively that there's something going on here. Cut to, his own son is put into a frontal lobe-related coma, and he is like, I'm gonna put him back together using this new-fangled knowledge I have. So, he kills 2 more kids just to make sure everything works the way he thinks it does, because he is a psychopath who kills kids, leading to him spring-locking his own son, which apparently fails, as far as William is concerned. The son doesn't, come back to life immediately or anything. So he buries his son in a grave, in an unmarked grave, in the woods, which is not great. He then blames all of these disappearances, the 4 other kids and his own son from the hospital, on his business partner Henry, who was arrested and convicted. Then, sometime later, he gets really drunk and kills his friend's daughter, who has been ostracized by her friends for the murders. And then he goes back home and tries to verbally amuse his own child, and then find out that his child has disappeared into the woods with a manifestation of grief, or whatever the heck those footprints are in Midnight Motorist. All of this occurs in the summer of 1983, because we have confirmation of the Bite of 83 happening in 1983 in FNAF 4, that's not controversial in any way. And the kids are out of school, so it makes sense that it will be in summer, just as we learned in FNAF 1. The double murders of Gabriel and Jeremy occur on June 26th of whatever year that newspaper is from, which, as I said, would be 1983. Thank you if you agree with this theory. You are right. If you don't, I don't like you. I probably won't be making a whole lot of these videos, but I felt like this was important because I think it really cleans up my biggest issue with the dual process theory, one that I apparently share with Matthew Patrick. If you like this video, like it, subscribe. I usually make music on this channel. I don't usually make videos where I talk into a microphone, so if the quality on this whole video is a little bit off, that's why. But once again, I felt like this was an important video to make. Thanks for watching. See you on Sunday when I post another music video.